Marcus Webb had watched enough heist movies to consider himself an expert robber. Sitting in his cramped studio apartment, surrounded by maxed-out credit card statements and eviction notices, he decided his financial problems required a cinematic solution. Banks have insurance, he muttered to himself, rewinding Ocean's 11 for the 14th time. Nobody really gets hurt. The problem was that Marcus had none of Danny Ocean's charm, resources, or competent crew. What he did have was a high school chemistry set he'd bought at a garage sale for $3, an outdated book called Pyrotechnics for Dummies, and a confidence that far exceeded his abilities over the next 2 weeks. Marcus cobbled together what he generously called a smoke device, essentially a glorified firecracker that produced more noise than destruction. He tested it once in a dumpster behind his building, where it fizzled pathetically before emitting a small puff of gray smoke. Perfect, Marcus declared, somehow interpreting this failure as success. He chose First Community Bank on Maple Street, mainly because it was within walking distance from his apartment and had free parking. His research consisted of visiting once to open a checking account with his last $20, during which he noted that the security guard was approximately 70 years old and spent most of his time doing crossword puzzles. On a drizzly Tuesday morning, Marcus entered the bank wearing a ski mask, a hoodie, and remarkably squeaky sneakers. His dramatic entrance was somewhat undermined by the fact that he slipped on the wet floor mat and nearly fell. "This is a robbery," he announced, holding up his homemade device, which looked less like a bomb and more like a science fair project that had received a C-. The bank, containing exactly 4 customers and 3 employees, went silent. Then someone's phone rang, playing a cheerful pop song that Marcus couldn't help but recognize from his gym's playlist. "Nobody move," Marcus added, trying to regain authority. He waved his device threateningly. "This is a bomb. I want all the money from the tills." The elderly security guard, whose name tag read Harold, slowly looked up from his crossword. "Son, is that a Coke bottle wrapped in duct tape?" "It's a sophisticated explosive device." Marcus's voice cracked slightly. "Teller number 1, a young woman named Jessica, squinted at the device. Are those Christmas lights?" "They're wires. Bomb wires. They're blinking," observed customer number 2, a middle-aged man in a business suit. Marcus looked down at his device. The Christmas lights were indeed blinking in a festive red and green pattern. In his panic the night before, he'd grabbed the wrong strand from a storage closet. "Just give me the money," he shouted, slamming his free hand on the counter. Jessica, following her training to comply with robbery demands to avoid escalation, began pulling bills from her drawer. Unfortunately for Marcus, it was early Tuesday morning, and banks don't keep much cash in individual tills overnight. Jessica counted out the bills with professional efficiency. "I've got $243, she announced. "What? That's it?" Marcus's criminal persona faltered. "Well, we just opened. Most people use cards now." "Fine, everyone. Empty your drawers. All tills." The other 2 tellers began emptying their drawers while customers watched with a mixture of concern and secondhand embarrassment. The total came to $1,047. Marcus shoved the cash into a reusable grocery bag he'd forgotten to bring, an actual robbery bag, and had to use what was in his car. As he turned to leave, his festively blinking device started making a noise. Not an explosive noise, a beeping noise. Then it began playing Jingle Bells. "Is your bomb playing Christmas music?" Harold asked. "It's on a timer," Marcus improvised poorly. "It's February," Jessica pointed out. Marcus fled, his squeaky sneakers announcing his departure. He burst through the doors, stumbled on the same mat, and sprinted to his 2003 Honda Civic, which he'd left running in a loading zone. Unfortunately, during his poorly planned heist, a parking enforcement officer had arrived and was in the process of writing a ticket. "Sir, you can't park here," the officer said, not yet aware of the situation. "Emergency," Marcus shouted, jumping into his car. He threw the vehicle in reverse and immediately backed into a decorative lamppost, crumpling his rear bumper. The parking officer stepped back, confused, as Marcus shifted into drive and peeled out, his muffler making concerning sounds. Marcus made it approximately 8 blocks before his check engine light came on. He pulled into a gas station, his hands shaking as adrenaline wore off, and reality set in. He'd just robbed a bank. He'd just committed multiple felonies for $1,047. He'd also left his homemade device on the bank counter, the one that was currently playing Jingle Bells, the one covered in his fingerprints. Marcus counted the money with growing despair. After removing the 320s that turned out to be counterfeit training bills, Jessica had accidentally grabbed them from the wrong stack. He was down to $987. The news that evening featured security footage of the heist. The local anchor struggled to maintain professionalism. "Police are calling this the Christmas Light Bandit after the suspect's unusual choice of weaponry. They're asking anyone with information to come forward." The footage clearly showed Marcus's distinctive squeaky sneakers and his car's license plate. Marcus turned himself in the next morning, still wearing the same squeaky sneakers. At his trial, Marcus's public defender argued for leniency, citing his client's spectacular incompetence as evidence of diminished capacity for criminal enterprise. The judge was not amused. "Mr. Webb, you've pled guilty to armed robbery. Even though your weapon was a Coke bottle, duct tape, and Christmas lights that played seasonal music. You netted less than $1,000 and caused approximately $4,000 in damage to a municipal lamppost. You also somehow left your wallet in the bank, with your driver's license and your library card. Marcus had forgotten about that part. I'm sentencing you to 3 years in prison, with credit for time served and eligibility for parole in 18 months. Contingent on you completing educational programs in both financial literacy and basic common sense. Should such a course exist. In prison, Marcus became something of a legend, though not the kind he'd hoped for. His fellow inmates called him Jingle Bells, and guards regularly asked him to retell the story for their own entertainment. During his incarceration, Marcus completed a business degree through a prison education program. Upon its release, he wrote a book titled How Not to Commit Crimes, a cautionary tale, which sold moderately well in the true crime section. He never made back the money from the robbery, which had been returned to the bank within 24 hours. But he did eventually pay off his credit cards, avoid eviction from a new apartment, and learn that some problems can't be solved by watching too many heist movies and having access to a garage sale chemistry set. The bank framed the festive bomb as a reminder to their staff. Harold, the security guard, got a small raise, and First Community Bank on Maple Street installed better floor mats. Like, share, and subscribe for more. The end.